What is happening, YouTube? I'm Spectre. I'm in a mood because I just recorded this bloody video. Go all the way back there, parked up, and find that I hadn't formatted the SD card, so I just ran out of space like the second I left home. So yeah, that's good. That's always a fun way to start the day. So you're gonna miss out on a walk around at a really beautiful, scenic location. Because I feel like a tit going back there again because I'm not really supposed to have been there in the first place. But to reiterate everything I've just said, this video I want to talk about the bike that I'm riding. I did a walk around of that, and I want to also talk you guys through the bikes that I've been through in the last few years since you saw me last. So the last video before my recent return, I was riding a Suzuki Vstrom 650. It was a 2010, I think. It was a K9 model, so it's a big cat-eyed one. It was a fantastic bike. It was an absolutely amazing bike. It remains the most comfortable bike I've ever ridden, bar none. The ride is soft and it's pliant. The seat is big and wide and soft and spongy. It's not particularly fast, it's not particularly agile, but it's very dependable. And I love that bike. I'd love to get another one as a second bike to this, maybe, like a more capable motorway sort of rider, maybe. I don't know. Yeah, as we ride along the seafront here, which is the best part of Plymouth. Barbican behind us and the seafront here. Smeaton's Tower, you've got the ocean there. That lump out there, that's Drake's Island. You'll know if I ever win the lottery because I'll buy it. Because it's privately owned and it's so cool. And it's got all manner of old military buildings, and it's such a cool spot. And just imagine living there, have a boat. It's big enough that you can have like a little dirt bike to get around the island on, and you'd actually justify it. And it'll be awesome. So that's my goal in life. Last time it sold, I think it was only like, I don't know, 6 million or something. Wasn't it actually that much money? They've tried to make hotels in it several times with like heliports and stuff, you know, that sort of style. But it's difficult to get the permissions and money in place for, I think. Yeah, so I had the Vstrom, and the Vstrom was a fantastic bike. I really, really liked that bike. But unfortunately, I lived in Lincoln, and I was wrapped around a Lincoln driver, stationary in traffic. Car behind me, woman was, I don't even know what she was doing. Wasn't looking where she was driving, certainly, because she drove straight into me and squished me into the car in front, which was one of those big, like, Toyota Amazon type jobbies. So it just sort of, my bike just sort of wrapped around the front of it without really doing any damage to it. So the V-Strom was sadly a write-off, but it was a Cat N write-off, which is the replacement for the Cat D. So N for non-structural, which means you are allowed to repair it and put it back on the road. So exactly what I did, because the insurance was going to offer me like literally £100 for it or something like that. The difference in payout if they kept the bike was nothing at all. So obviously I kept it, even just for the sake of parting it out, but no, repaired it, and I continued riding it, and it was still a great bike. It looked tatty, like it had you know, panel gaps and stuff where the frame to hold the fairings on had been like dented, so the fairings didn't sit right and stuff like that. So mechanically it was perfectly fine, but aesthetically it was a little bit rough. Oh, it was a little bit tatty, and maybe a tart. I thought, well, I'd quite like something a little bit nicer, a little bit cleaner. So I went and I got a Yamaha Virago 1100 cruiser. Big old cruiser, sort of semi-apes on the handlebars. It had a straight-through exhaust, which was disgusting. And the obligatory, like, chode-sized registration plate that comes with that sort of thing. It was cool for a weekend. And I've previously owned a Virago before. I had a 535 Virago, which was my first big bike, in quotes, after I got my A2 license. And it was an absolute crate. It was awful. Everything broke it. Everything was just constantly falling off and falling apart. It was such an unreliable bike. It really did a number on me, that one. Looked great, sounded great. It was a nice bike to ride when it was working, but in the time that I had it, it spent more time broken than not broken. And this second Virago was the exact same. I had it one weekend and then tried to go to work on it on the Monday, and the bloody thing didn't start. I suspect what happened is the reg rect had blown, because the reg rects on those are made out of like cheese, But I kept having these flashbacks to the first Virago, and it was just, you know, my trust was shaken in it. So I ended up taking it back to the dealer I bought it from, gave it back to them, and got my Vstrom back, sort of on part X'd it. And I had that for a little bit longer. And then, once again, I wanted something clean and shinier. So I got a Vulcan 800 Classic Kawasaki. And that was a really nice bike. You know, it rode alright, it was properly slow, but it looked great, it sounded great, and it was, you know, it was a nice bike. Particularly once I took the windscreen off, because I'm not really a big fan of windscreens on classic bikes. So when it's a tourer, it's different, but something like a cruiser or, you know, something like that. It's cool, but it was just hopelessly inefficient. It got about 75, 80 miles to the main tank, and you know, obviously that's with me riding. And don't get me wrong, I don't ride conservatively, but still, 75 miles when I had a 25-mile round commute to get to work, just not feasible. You know, that's me putting fuel in every third day, and it's not also. It wasn't just running out of fuel. It had no fuel light. It had no fuel gauge. It would just die in traffic, and then you had to pull over. Wow, what an abrupt change of lighting and direction. Yeah, this is the third time that I've recorded this video today. It's really going well. I'm really back into the flow of this motovlogging thing. So the first time, I recorded the whole video, all of it in its entirety, stopped and found that I hadn't formatted the card before I came out. So I'd recorded about 30 seconds before I'd left the house, and then run out of memory, which is so good. The second time is what you just saw, where I got to the point where it just jumped here, and the battery ran out because I just recorded 1.5 videos. So yeah, love that for me. So as I was saying, right, the Vulcan was a great bike. I think that's where it was. So it just wasn't practical for a bike that I need to commute with, which is what it was. So that one had to go as well, and then I got the Versys 650. It was a 2009, and it was a really good bike. I don't like it as much as the Vstrom. It's a lot faster and it's a lot more agile than the Vstrom was, but it doesn't have the same comfort, and I prefer the comfort myself. I had that for about a year, and I didn't get on with it because I'd had these two big, loud, shitey cruisers directly before it, and then suddenly I'm on this like commuter tourer with like not a great deal of character, very competent, but just not all that inspiring. And I had it for a long time, and then I made a couple of mods to it. I put a different exhaust on. I got a Delcovic carbon can, and I got a different screen. It had this big like riot shield looking thing when I got it, and I put on a really short little stubby little screen, and it just transformed the bike overnight. Honestly, it was, the exhaust gave it just so much character because you could hear it and you could have fun with like downshifting and you know, rev matching and stuff, and it's just, you know, it sounds more interesting, and the screen made it. It's obviously it's only placebo, but it just made it seem so much more nimble and so much more agile in the corners. It was great, and it was like a whole new. It really was like a whole new bike, just from those two little things. And just as I had started to bond with it, yeah, that happened. As you might have seen in my return video, I had a minor coming together, shall we say, with a car in Lincoln, and I had a minor coming apart of several bones, and yeah, that was it. The bike was shrapnel. It was a write-off like the Vstrom, but this time it was very much non-repairable. In fact, it was actually a Cat B, which means I think it was either Cat B or Cat S. Either way, it meant that not only can you not repair it, but you can't even do anything with it. You legally have to scrap the frame. And that then brings me to my current bike, which I will show you in one moment when we pull over. This is my current motorcycle. It is a Triumph T100 Bonneville. It's a 2011 plate, which makes it the 865cc fuel injected but air-cooled variant, which is quite a nice place to be. It's kind of where I want it to be. You get the modern convenience of fuel injection, because I really can't be asked for carbs, not on a bike of this value, but it's a bit more usable because it has the fuel injection. But it's still got a lot of the character of the old 790 carbed one. I do wish it had a 6th gear, which the newer ones have, but budget and all that. So yeah, that's the bike. I'm going to talk you through what the mods are on it currently, and then we'll get going and talk about the mods that are planned. So first and foremost, I've got my Denali Sign Bomb Mini on there. It doesn't look right where it is, it doesn't fit the style, but practically it is just amazing. It's a massive horn. It's saved my ass several times. I've had it on several bikes. While we're on the front, just in here I've hidden a little USB socket, which is always really handy. So when I've got my sat nav off the bars here, I can put a cable straight to there and charge as I go, which makes things a lot easier. Bars themselves are stock bars. They do have these Oxford heated grips on, which are disgusting. They're the cruiser variant, so this is plastic on the end and they have flames on the side, and it's not too bad now, but on a hot day that grip's barely attached, which is really useful. So I'm going to talk more about what I'm going to do with those when we get riding again. Also, this is just zip tied on. It's secure, but it just looks crap. Coming back on the bike, I've got a couple of, you want me to see these, but I've got a couple of CNC'd thumb screws, so I can hit the side panels off without a screwdriver. They're from Tech Bike Parts. These pannier rails are also from Tech Bike Parts. And I've added this, which is an Aldi bicycle frame bag actually, but it sits quite nicely on the inside of the pannier rail. So with my main saddle bags, which go over the top here and zip into that, it gives me this hidden storage spot. So if I go to a beach or whatever, I can just park up and leave like phone and keys and stuff, and hopefully no one would notice because it's out of sight sort of thing. And then you've got, yeah, this is a factory rear rack in chrome, and as you can see, it's very useful for having my lock and all the rest of it on. Overall, the bike's in great condition. There is a bit of rust. Chain's a bit gross, as you can see. Exhaust's a bit hot. Ow. There's a bit of rust. My storage for it currently is not ideal, where I'm in this sort of temporary limbo. So there's a bit of rust on some of the wheels. A little bit on the inside of this tech part here, which I'm not too happy about. Thanks for that, guys. But yeah, overall, it's not too bad. Also, you'll see at the back, I've covered my plate. My fender's all smashed in, and I'm missing the rear reflector. That's because I got rear-ended on this as well, because apparently I'm just fucking invisible. So that's always fun. I've got a new one of those on the way. The guy did pay for it, so you know, I guess all's fair. I'm still going to waste a bunch of time on it, but I'll soon have a new rear mudguard, which is taking ages to get here from Triumph, and a new reflector. But in the meantime, it is a great bike I'm very happy with. I'm going to jump back on now, and I will tell you about what I've got planned for the bike in terms of mods, and what I'd like to do to it. First thing I want to change, obviously I mentioned these grips at the front here, which are just crap. I'd like to change the bars generally, because they're a little bit narrow, and they turn out a little bit, which I'm finding a little bit inconvenient on sort of longer rides. It sort of does my wrist in a little bit. So I'd like to put something like a sort of slightly taller, straighter, like a tracker bar. Sort of scramblery-ish. I don't know yet whether I'm going to do chrome or black. It's chrome currently. Most of the bike is chrome, but also there's the black on the tank. And I didn't mention, obviously, this being the T100 variant, it gets, aside from chrome spoked wheels, it also gets this gorgeous hand-painted tank with the black, the white swooshes, and the gold pinstriping, and the painter's initials are actually written on the tank under the seat. But yeah, so I'm going to change the bars, and when I change the bars, because I'll probably do this in all one hit because of the cables and stuff, I'll change the bars, and I'm also going to change these grips. Now, I like them being heated grips, and they function just fine. So I'd like to keep them heated. Oxford do actually make a set of classic looking heated grips these days, so maybe those, or maybe just the ordinary Oxford grips, to be fair. There's nothing wrong with them. Once they're on, Because the problem with these, aside from them being ugly, is this end cap, apart from it being plastic, is also part of the grip and it turns, so you can't have bar weights or bar end mirrors. And that's kind of annoying. So once I've got some ordinary grips on, I'm going to have some bar weights, which will hopefully help with some of the vibrations, and bar end mirrors, which I'm intending to get underslung. So there'll be ones that go up and over the hand, but then they'll be upside down, so they'll be down sort of there. And I've had bar end mirrors before, and they're really good. They look like they'd be really impractical, but honestly, give them a try. If your bike suits it, give them a try, because mirrors like these, I like how they look, but functionally, I can only really see, I can see my elbow in both of them. A chance to have a nice underslung, it will bring the lines of the bike down, so the sort of, the bars in this reservoir will be the highest point on it, which will look really nice and sort of sleek, and I'll be looking under my own arm, so you'll look down into that gap between sort of my left arm and my tank there, and then it gives you a really, really good view of the road behind. But that's about it. That's about it for the front end. Moving back, I really like the look of the bench seat that it has currently, but practically it's not the most comfortable thing. Partly because you slide back on it when you try and accelerate too hard, and partly because it's just sort of quite thin and not a great deal of padding to it. I'm certainly not going to get a king and queen seat because I hate how those look on the Bonnevilles, but I am going to probably get like a sort of hipstery ribbed for her pleasure seat, and I think that'll be quite a nice addition. Sort of custom up the back end a little bit, add a little bit more traction, a little bit more comfort, particularly if you get some sort of thicker padding and stuff, and maybe in a nice dark brown to match my saddlebags, something like that, just to break up the black a little bit. I'd like some better saddlebags eventually. The ones I have are very cheap. They function for now, but it'd be nice to get some better ones down the line. And the big thing for the back, and the only performance mods I'm really planning on doing, is I want to change the exhaust. So I really like how this stock exhausts look, the big P shooters. I think it suits the bike really well. It balances the bike, and with it being the T100 instead of the SE Bonneville, which is the one with the cast wheels and the single tone. The SE you can get away with being a bit ratty, but this being sort of such a classic look, it kind of dictates the mods a little bit. Side note, Miller Court just in there, Cook Motorcycles is my go-to motorcycle mechanic in Plymouth. He was the guy I used when I was living here before. I've gone straight back to him now I'm back, and he's a really good mechanic. He's a really nice guy. Yeah, I thoroughly recommend him. I think both him and the one I had up in Lincoln, which was SK Motorcycles, Steve up there and Phil down here, the thing they both have in common is they're both sort of one-man band, like one mechanic only, also owns the garage, and I think having your name over the shop gives you that much more pride in the work that you do and the sort of the service that you give, so much more than like just some mechanic who's working a job for a company, you know. But yeah, performance-wise, I'd like to change the exhaust, and top of the line is probably the Dunstalls. So, like I said, I really like the look of the stock P shooters. So something as close to that, but just sounding meatier and nicer, because you can barely hear this bike. That's something that would be nice. And the Dunstalls are a really meaty noise to them. They've got a real bass to them, from what I've seen in videos, and they're also a British brand, which is always nice. On top of that, my best mate has a Scrambler. He's got the Scrambler 900, the one before the Street Scrambler, which uses the same sort of motor as this. And unfortunately, he blew up his motor recently. He didn't blow up his motor. The motor blew up recently. Complete freak. No one knows. No one's heard of it. No one's seen it before. Like these engines are normally bulletproof. And yeah, it just absolutely grenaded itself. So as part of the rebuild, because the engine was, like I say, absolutely chewed, he's had to get a big bore kit for his engine, and as a result of that, he did have a stage 1 tune. He's now got a stage 2 tune because of the big bore, and as a result, a lot of his stage 1 parts are just sort of going spare. So I'm going to have a lot of his stage 1 stuff off him, and I'll probably end up stage 1ing this when I fit the Dunstalls. So what that entails, it takes out the, I forget what Triumph called it, but you know, the secondary air system in the exhaust that makes it pop when you come off the throttle. It removes that. It also removes, or it adjusts stuff in the airbox, like guts the airbox, and there's a couple of other little changes. Nothing too dramatic. It doesn't make a massive difference in terms of power, and there'll be a map with it as well. It's not like, yeah, it's not a huge amount of difference in power, but it should add a bit more sort of mid-range torque, which is always nice to have. And obviously it'll also make it run a lot nicer with the Dunstalls. I'm kind of hoping it will help with the bike's cold-bloodedness as well, because it's a bit of a reptile, this bike, at the moment. It's, you know, you almost always need to use the little like fast idle sort of fake choke thing when you start. It's a bit of a pain to start when it's hot, and whenever you start it, there's a couple of seconds where it's just very lumpy. You have to sort of let it get its breath before you can like blip or anything. But yeah, so that's really the mod list for this. It's not too dramatic, I'd say. It's got a lot of stuff to it already, and you know, these bikes, they come out of the factory looking gorgeous, so there's not a great deal of aesthetics. I dare say I'll throw a bunch of like miscellaneous tech parts and motones at it. I'd like to get a locking filler cap at some point, and like, I quite like the Monzas, so they're sort of like the pop top, but they sit so far pride of the actual tank. I don't know if I want that, particularly if I'm bringing the lines of the bike down with the dropped mirrors. So I might get, there's ones you can get that look like this, but they've got the key in the middle and they lock. So I'll probably go for that. And then, yeah, I'll throw some bits and pieces at it over time, I'm sure. I might change the indicators. I quite like the indicators, to be fair. I don't hate them. They do suit the bike. But the big thing I'm excited for is the exhaust. You know, the rest is, it can come when it comes. And the bars will make a big difference as well. A really big difference in terms of how it feels to ride. But the exhaust is going to just liven up so much. And, you know, with me being, you know, I like a fairly light bike, and I do like stealthy sort of, you know, it's quite subtle, it's quite, you know, restrained. But at the same time, I want it to sing, I want it to scream at me. Now we're back here where the technically second video cut out. I'm actually going to leave it here, so thank you very much for watching this intro to my bike. I have got a car as well now, which I didn't used to have. I'll do a video on my car at some point, because I've had a few cars as well. So maybe I'll do the same sort of walk around of my current car and run down of my previous ones type deal. All that said, thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you all in the next video. Peace.